welcome to A Good Walk Spoiled Adventures in Golf with your host, Scott Ponywaz, also known as Pony Golf. A Good Walk Spoiled is part of the Millions.co and Golfer Gang networks. Thank you for tuning in. Let's swing into this week's episode.
Hello and welcome to another episode of A Good Walk Spoiled. My name is Scott Ponywaz. Most of you hopefully know that by now and you've been listening. If you're new, welcome. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, depending on whatever platform you're stumbling upon my little corner of the podcast world from. If you're catching me on one of the audio versions, I've also got the podcast on YouTube channels if you want to see my beautiful smiling pony golf face. And if you're catching me on YouTube and you don't want to catch my smiling, beautiful pony golf face, which I can't imagine why not, then you can always catch me on your favorite podcast channels or networks as well. Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, all those fun ones out there. So wherever your preferred place is, subscribe, like, follow, and feel free to drop any comments along the way as well. Love to hear from any of you all. Hear what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to hear, what I might be able to answer and connect with you all on. Those of you that have maybe been following along on my Instagram over at @pony_golf probably are aware that I've been having a little bit of a struggle street tournament season. I came off the state am a couple weeks ago and then sort of went a little heads down on prep for the Pacific Northwest Mid-Am. I went out and probably shot a career low, if not in normal play, but also probably in tournament play. I don't even want to repeat the number. It's been a struggle street. I've been working on some swing changes, and some of those I've put in the back of my mind as, okay, just go out, do your thing, and try to make everything work as best you can in the tournaments this season. And I was hoping that they would kind of be shaken out by the state am tournament, and then it was just sort of a mediocre performance at best across the whole tournament. And then got to the Pacific Northwest Mid-Am and just had a blow-up round, and then sort of mentally was trying to just struggle my way back down to normal. So played a little better each round, but still sort of got myself back into the high level of my normal mediocre. So hoping that next week at the Montana State Mid-Am, I'm back in normal shape and I'm back to going low and shooting some scores down in contention again, because I have to say there have been some thoughts of, wow, I think it might be time to hang up the clubs for the season in tournament play. But you got to kind of grind on, and it's one of those things where you sign up for a tournament, you got to see it through. And definitely had some people that I played with along the way that withdrew and didn't make it through the end of the tournament. But some of these tournaments too, if you withdraw just because of your performance without a good reason, then that can prohibit you from playing in the future. So you're seeing the dog at the back of the YouTube here, or maybe hearing the pitter patters around. Forgot to put the dog gate up. So we're gonna keep rolling though. Today is a little off the cuff. I had sort of missed last week's because I was playing in a Monday through Thursday event, and it was, like I said, trying to get back into the right headspace. So sorry if you missed me last week. I know a lot of you were on the edge of your seats waiting for me to be on your new release podcast list, but now you've got me. So hopefully the wait is worth it. today, I actually, it's funny I picked the topic that I did pick for today, which is bunkers. So bunkers are going to be today's sort of topic of the day. Before we get into that, I do want to thank a lot of my sponsors, partners, people like Galway Bay, people like Holderness and Bourne, and Red Rooster Golf. All of these great brands that I love and partner with. Of course, Smith Optics and GoPro. And if you want to see all the other ones, check out my website, pony.golf. That's just head to pony.golf. That's the URL. There's no .com or anything. It's pony.golf. You can find them all there, or you can always look at the links in the description. If you're thinking about some stuff, go support those brands. And I'd love to have you do that so that I can continue to sort of pursue my amateur golf career, because we all know we don't make very much on the amateur circuits. So any support there helps me continue to also put this podcast out there. So with that, I'm going to pause real quick and put a little clip from Galway Bay up, and then we'll get into the bunkers episode. Out here testing out this rain gear. It works. Your pants. I'm just very impressed. Look at that water just beating off of it. As you can see, the rain is coming down. Not a very beautiful day in the neighborhood, but still out here. Finishing a couple holes. Enjoying the new Galway Bay gear. Gotta practice like you play sometimes. So, spring in Montana. Gotta love it. Thank you for hanging around for that one. As I alluded to before the break, I'm going to have a couple little things here, and it's bunkers. And the reason why it's bunkers is because as I was playing at the Mid-Am this last week, both in practice round and then also in some of the other rounds, kind of started talking a little bit about bunkers, and bunkers in particular as they pertain to pro golf. While for a lot of amateur golfers, the bunker can be super intimidating, can be super challenging, and can be one of those things where you kind of get into it and it's just this thing that you never practice. And so it's just sort of an actual hazard, both mentally as well as physically, as far as swinging the club. And, if you go onto YouTube or you go onto or into like Golf Digest magazines over the years, you can find so many articles that are how to hit the perfect bunker shot, how to hit the perfect fairway bunker shot, how to spin a bunker shot, how to not chunk a bunker shot, how to not thin a bunker shot. There are all these different topics out there, and all these sort of how-tos and helper articles and YouTubes about bunker shots in particular. And I almost wonder now, in retrospect, if so many of us have it in our heads that a bunker shot is supposed to be this huge, intimidating thing. I have to say that as my handicap has come down and I've started to figure out how to hit and play the bunkers, and this is partially thanks to some of the coaching I've mentioned, via Skillist, Bill Schmidis, and, working with him in person. I just remember the first time when I really started working with him more in depth. And I was working with him down in Savannah at the golf school that he was coaching at. And we did a bunker lesson, and it was one of those things that finally helped me understand bunker shots. And from there, I then understood how all these PGA players, a lot of times, as you follow professional golfers more and more, are very high-end amateur golfers that are, at the highest levels of the elite play, there's a lot of times, especially with heavy rough around the greens, where you ask a low handicap golfer that is very highly skilled if they would rather chip out of deeper rough or if they'd rather chip out of a bunker. And a couple of us started having the conversation at this mid-am the last weekend about bunker play and how once you actually start to practice it and you start to understand the sort of physics and just the mechanics of a bunker shot, a lot of times we feel better out of a bunker than we do out of heavier rough, because bunkers around specific courses tend to have similar sand types. Most golf courses will tend to have um, similar light sands or heavier sands or shallow sands that once you hit a couple bunker shots out of it, you've kind of been there before and you understand. I mean, I'm not talking some of the weird plugged shots that 1 out of 100 times you get, or, the weird bunker shots that get buried into the lip of the bunker, or any of those kinds of shots. But you talk to a lot of pro players and you even hear some of the interviews with a lot of these pro players, and they start to say, I'd rather be in the bunker than in some of the rough or even some of the fairway cuts in some of the sort of like maybe miss areas around a green, because with the bunker shots, you can get more spin out of them. So if you have short-sided bunker shots, sometimes you can more predictably spin the ball and hold it on areas that might run away from you more typically. Whereas if you're chipping on a thinner fairway type cut, it might not be able to get that spin, and there might be harder ground underneath that you can't necessarily get under, and the extra bounce and all those other different factors that factor in. So this leads me to why I'm kind of going down this rabbit hole right now, and that's, I think that professional golf is getting boring with bunkering. And I really am starting to think and believe more and more that the PGA and LIV and all the major events, instead of fining players for not raking the bunkers in the most pristine, proper way, because they actually will fine your caddy and you as the player if a bunker is not properly raked and replaced back to sort of tour level specs. I really believe that bunkering should be treated as waste, and it should be treated as a hazard, and people shouldn't rake. And I think that, sure, day-to-day public play, maybe we should keep the rakes and going. But in PGA Tours, and you've seen it in some of these tournaments where bunkers are considered waste at places like Whistling Straits, or just recently at the US Open in Pinehurst, where a lot of those areas were waste areas. And um, being penalized for your ball going into somebody else's footprint, I think should be a thing, because if at that high level, these guys are aiming for bunkers in the PGA Tour. I'm sure the LPGA Tour is similar in a lot of respects. You just don't hear the interviews maybe as much about LPGA, but I have to assume that they're saying the same thing a lot of times, where rather just aim for that bunker in front of the green, and if they miss it, they miss it. If they hit it, they hit it. They just don't want it to be, running up into the lip. And I think that it would penalize golfers at these higher levels more if bunkers actually were a penalty for them nowadays. It's just gotten to be so mechanical and so predictable for them to hit those bunker shots that they really should be buried in and having to deal with messy lies and unpredictable sand, and not just that smooth scoop out that they can usually predict. So there is my rant and rave. I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear your feedback. Ping me either on Instagram in the comments and my DMs, or even better yet, if you're here on YouTube or you're here on any of the other podcast platforms, drop your comments. I just really want to hear what your thoughts are. Of course, give it a like if you agree with me on this episode, because then maybe, the PGA Tour will listen to me, Jay Monahan, and some of those other guys will start to make some changes. Greg Norman over on the LIV. So drop a like if you agree with me on this episode. So if you're on YouTube or whatever, drop a like if you agree that the bunkers should be treated as waste areas. That's what makes now a perfect transition into a little bit of the history of bunkers in golf. And so I did a little digging, and it's really quite fascinating because it reflects the evolution of the game itself. And they're originally known as sand traps, which, again, going back to my point that they should be a trap. They've been a feature of golf courses since the early days of the sport, and the origins of golf and its features, including bunkers, can go back to the 15th century in Scotland, where early golf was played on links land, which naturally included sandy hollows that became known as bunkers. And these, in the early days, were not intentionally created, but were rather the natural elements of rugged coastal terrain where early golf courses were established. And you can see this sort of resurgence, especially when you look at some of the courses, which I'll actually get into, some of the most notorious or well-known bunker courses here in a minute. But a lot of golf course architecture is going backwards to this original sort of sandy wasteland type of developed area. You look at Chambers Bay, you look at Pinehurst, where if you watched a lot of the coverage, including some of the special sort of stories and footages about Donald Ross and the golf course architecture and the restorations that have happened at Pinehurst, you'll see that sort of in periods of the 70s and the 80s at a course like Pinehurst, which hosted the US Open this past year, they actually had started to try to cover a lot of these sandy hollows, bunkers, natural wastelands. And then the restoration of late, they've actually been trying to recreate these to bring back the original way that the courses were designed to be played. Some of this I think is to add to more of the penalization. But this is the kind of stuff where making bunkers actual bunkers that are a hazard instead of a welcoming little spot to aim for professional golfers. Instead of rolling back golf ball distances, the golf balls going into these bunkers that were designed to catch and penalize golfers is, I think, a better plan than rolling back golf ball distances. However, that's a digression. And as we go into the 19th century, as golf courses became more formalized and the sport spread, bunkers were actually becoming intentionally incorporated in course design. By the late 19th century, bunkers started to be constructed deliberately as strategic elements of golf courses, adding a challenge and a complexity to the game. And this is where you look at some of the modern day architects like Doak, who has started to use it, and he's also, places like the Loop and Forest Dunes, and you look at Bandon Dunes, and you look at some of the other courses that like Pete Dye has designed. where bunkers are actually designed to sort of mess with your line of sight and make holes appear longer or shorter than they actually are, sort of adding that visual deception to a golf course where many people nowadays are starting to use GPS, which I myself love Arcos, and um, I find it much easier to use than rangefinders. You can see some of my previous reviews and my previous episodes on YouTube about Arcos and why I like it, or the other episode would be the how I went from a 15 to a 2 handicap. Where I talk a little bit about Arcos, but Arcos can help me take the distance out and prevent me from getting into uh, some of the visual traps. And it's totally USGA tournament legal at the amateur level. Um, but it helps me because I basically go into what I consider video game golf because I can say, okay, I know, especially if I've played a course before, I need to carry this. And I can look above and be like, oh, that bunker that's up there, there's actually 40 yards behind it before the green. Like, it's not as tight as it looks. And when you play a certain course multiple times, you start to gather that local knowledge. But when you're playing new courses all the time, that can really help to up your game. And that's exactly why Pete Dye uses those technologies, and Tom Doak and Donald Ross and Tillinghast and all these different golf course architects is they use bunkering as a protection to the course as well as sort of an intimidation. And you know this if you've ever stood 40 yards away from the green and you know that there's plenty of room to hit the ball over the bunker and you've done it 99 out of 100 times, but just something about staring at that mouth of the bunker in your face creates that intimidation factor. And that's exactly why in the 19th century they really started to push on constructing deliberate bunkering. So during the 20th century, which you might call the golden age of golf course architecture, bunkers became increasingly sophisticated in their design and placement. Architects began to use bunkers not just as hazards, but also as strategic and aesthetic elements. And this was partially made easier because of the equipment that was made available to move dirt and to actually dig out these bunkers and to place them in some of these strategic places where they tended to be a little bit more waste area driven and natural landscape driven in the earlier days, where they would be maybe deliberately incorporated into the design. Whereas as we got into the 20th century, they had big machinery that could start to move dirt and to design these um, aesthetic and strategic bunkers in different ways. And you'll see palm trees and you'll see the church pews and you'll see some of the other sort of architectural designs and elements that have started to become more familiar terminology these days in golf as more people have paid attention. So then we get into the mid 20th century bunker architecture, where we saw a shift even further because of that machinery and industrialization and more homogenized appearance, lacking the intricate details and diversity. So you started to see it a little bit more efficiently built, but it also sort of was at the same time as heavy golf course development. And this is where you started to see a lot more of the, I wouldn't say no-name courses, but you got a lot more of the municipals, you got a lot more of the residential golf course developments where it no longer was the big name architects and it was much more of a cookie cutter rinse and repeat copycat, these sort of cookie cutter holes from famous courses and pick and choose different elements of some of those courses where it's not necessarily the golf architect, but it was, hey, we're going to put in a development, and I'm by no means going to and I'm going to put a big asterisk next to this, but in one of my earlier episodes, I talk about Marion Hollins and her sort of parkland developments and preservation of green space for um, residential developments. And her initial development, which is inarguably, I don't know where it sort of fits among golf historians, but you look at America and American golf courses and American golf developments, and Pasatiempo is one of the very first American designs that used this. And Marion Hollins obviously only used the best of the best by bringing in Dr. Alistair Mackenzie, who also is well known for his design of none other than Augusta National. But that residential development around a golf course also became sort of a cookie cutter design that unfortunately bred a lot of, I'd say, mediocre design golf courses. And with that industrialization and the ability to just kind of quickly push some mounds of dirt around, hey, we're going to throw a bunker in there, and no real rhyme or reason necessarily. And there's, a lot of courses where you'll play as you play golf more and more, and you go, who designed this thing? And and why did they decide to put a bunker in this place? It makes zero sense. And some of it is because of that. It's because, hey, I'm a residential real estate developer, but we're going to put a golf course in here. And so some of that started to really take some of the exciting elements and the strategic use of bunkering and sort of put it into a less sophisticated golf course architecture. So bunkering now, as I kind of mentioned earlier, today there's a renewed interest in creating bunkers that are strategic and aesthetically pleasing and taking things back to the more naturalistic designs, and they blend with the landscape, and you have people going out of their way to find, similarly with Bandon Dunes, these remote coastal places that have the underlying natural sand and waste areas that they can pull away dirt from. And American Dunes, I know Jack Nicklaus found it was sitting on this great sort of natural waste area bunkering that he could reinvigorate into the land and pull away some of the forest and actually sort of rebuild some of this natural landscape. And you look at Sand Valley, and you look at all these different places. And so that kind of leads me to my next area. And I'm going to kind of go through a top 6 of some of the most renowned bunker courses. So take a quick pause, and when I come back, we'll jump into there. All right. And before we jump into this next one, I do want to, again, thank sponsors and partners for supporting the pod, and Golfer Gang Network as well. So as I mentioned, when we come back from that break, we're going to jump into some of the most notable golf courses known for their distinctive and challenging bunkering. So we're going to kind of do a quick hot shot hit list through here. Straits course at Whistling Straits, one of which that I've actually been privileged to play, famous for the number of bunkers, which stretches over 1,000 bunkers that are spread across the course. It's hosted major championships, including the PGA Championship and the Ryder Cup, where bunkers have played significant roles in the outcomes. Number 2 that I'm going to dive into is Muirfield, Scotland, which is renowned for its strategic bunkering. Muirfield is one of the most historic golf courses and has hosted numerous Open Championships. While nowhere near the 1,000 plus at the Straits course at Whistling Straits, it features 147 bunkers that are strategically placed throughout the course and challenge even the best golfers, as you would know if you've ever watched the Open, including some of those famous pot bunkers. Which pot bunkers leads me to the next one, Royal Latham and St. Anne's, England, which has over 100, well, about 174 pre-vetted pot bunkers, and it demands precision, especially considering it also hosts many of the Opens. Next up is Carnoustie Golf Links in Scotland with 112 bunkers throughout the course. Often considered one of the most challenging courses in the world just because of that bunkering. Next one, back stateside, and these next two are sort of close to being neighbors. First one being Oakmont Country Club in Pennsylvania. And this is one where, if you were listening earlier, I refer to the iconic church pews. Oakmont has these church pew bunkers and a total of 175 bunkers on the course. If you're not familiar with church pew bunkers, when I mentioned them earlier and now, they're kind of just as they sound. So imagine a big sort of rectangular style bunker, and in the middle it has several internal rows of or mounds of grass in almost like lines, and you also see it at TPC San Antonio TPC Scottsdale during the waste management. It is their 18th hole, if I'm not wrong on that. Nearly positive it's the 18th. But these church pew bunkers basically have a big sandy bunker, and then a row or multiple rows of these sort of church pew style mounds that are in the middle, and basically creates grassy and bunkering through and through. So Oakmont features the classic and iconic church pew architecture design element. And last but not least, out of this list of 6, unfortunately I haven't played any of them except for the Straits. So Oakmont, Pine Valley, and then hopefully I'll make it over to Scotland and England and play those. But last but not least is Pine Valley Golf Club, often considered not only one of the hardest golf courses in the world, it's consistently ranked the #1 course in the US, if not the world, and it's probably more difficult to get onto than Augusta. You can imagine that. It's one of the most private, exclusive clubs in the world, and it's famous for its very natural and rugged bunkers that blend seamlessly into the Pine Valley region of New Jersey, which hosts several golf courses that are also quite notable. But Pine Valley, one of the most incredible courses in the world, supposedly. And hopefully my invite is not lost in the mail. I've heard that some of my mail has been getting lost between New York and Montana from my move several years ago. So there's a handful of the bunkers, a little history of bunkering, some golf course architecture history of some of the bunkering, and again, give me a like if you agree that professional golfers and professional tournament golf should be more penalized and having those bunkers not raked. So there you have it. That's my episode for today. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned next week for next week's episode. If you're just finding out about me, like, subscribe, follow so that you don't miss any future episodes. And there's a lot of great episodes about golf course architecture. If you like those, some great interviews. Excuse me, with the founder of Crank Golf, Bryson DeChambeau's driver company. There are several other great interviews with some fish heads that play golf and organize golf tournaments that align with Fish Tour. There's some great golf mental and hypnosis episodes, as well as some fitness episodes. So tune in to or take a listen back to those, and tune into future episodes, and wish me luck as I head out to the Montana State this weekend / later this week. Thank you, and all the best, and hope your summer golf tournaments and golf season is going a little bit more smoothly than mine. So hope to see you on the course soon. That concludes today's episode of A Good Walk Spoiled, Adventures in Golf, hosted by Scott Ponywise. That's myself. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, rate it high, and follow us on Instagram at @pony_golf to stay in the loop. I'll catch you next time.